There we go. What's up? What's up? What's up? What's going on, everybody? How's everybody doing today? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I got all this stuff out the way. Okay. How's everybody doing today, man? Welcome to another episode of the D. Elliott Fitness live stream show today. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We got a good show lined up for you today. Today we're looking at basically everybody winding down, getting down to the end of their school year for their children and all that good stuff. So, you know, if you got your kids getting ready to get out of school and all that stuff, so you got to get ready to plan for the summertime. Yes, so hopefully everybody can make time for what they need to, get ready to be vacationing and be all over the place, doing all this other stuff that you got to do. Whoops, let me go ahead and turn off the sound on my phone because it's over here beeping. Let's turn that off. Okay, there we go. Okay, we're good on that. But yes, sir, it is Thursday. I would say it's about to be Friday, but I mean, well, yeah, I guess if you're at work, then yes, it is going to be Friday here shortly. So you got one more day to the weekend, but the kids are about to be out of school, so it's graduation week for basically all kids. I mean, at least this month or this week or next week or the week before, whatever it is, everybody's dealing with the cheering and all that good stuff and getting ready for graduation. We got a good show lined up for you today. Today's show, before we get into the show, just to let you know, we are simultaneously streaming on Cash App. We're not streaming on Cash App. On YouTube, Twitch, Kick, and Rumble. That's right, YouTube, Twitch, Kick, and Rumble. And if you're on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that like button right there to get the algorithm out. We're greatly appreciate it. That would be great if you did that, yes, sir. To get the algorithm going and put it out here so other people can see and get the message and all that good stuff. But today, if you want to contribute to today's show, right there, there's a Cash App. It's Daniel2888, and the Venmo is Danny-Daniel-00. Yes, now that we got all that out of the way, so hopefully you went in and got you a workout this morning like I did. Yours truly. I had to get my workout in and get my day jump started because, you know, getting a workout first thing in the morning to me is the best way to go. You get that stuff out the way first and then proceed on to, you know, crush the rest of your day. But the summertime is here, so we're going to have to figure out how to move and groove and do things because it's about to be a little bit of change going on. But we're still going to make things happen. We still going to make things work. That's right. Yes, I mean, hell, what else is there to do? But today we got our show today that we got going on. Today's going to be a little bit different with the show. Normally we do fitness. Fitness, economy, and AI. Fitness part, we're going to kind of dip out on that part today. We're still going to have a, muscle or bone of today, at least. We're going to have that. We're going to learn over on that, but then we're going to drop from there and get straight into the economy portion of the show. Today might be a little bit controversial, but if it is, oh well. There was a stream I did yesterday that basically talked about the theory of banking. Now, with the theory of banking, it kind of gave you the insight of this time frame of like how banking started way back when, and then brought it all the way up to speed to like almost current times. But there was a window in that theory of banking, right? It got to the time of 1919, and then it skipped from 1919 and got to 1941. There was a 20-year gap that was missing. And it was a lot of stuff that we learned about. And if you kind of pay attention to it, it was really speaking on the theory of banking and a lot of stuff that was going on behind banking. Whenever you had like World War I and World War II and things like that, you would realize that a lot of these wars were predicated on banking and not necessarily countries. So that was the biggest theory that you would take away from yesterday's stream, talking about the theory of banking. You learned that a lot of the wars that's been going on had a lot to do with banking as opposed to countries. So there was a piece of the video that, like I said, there was a 20-year gap in it. And in that 20-year gap, I wanted to go over this particular video that's going to talk about Germany during that time frame from 1920 to about 1940-ish. And it's going to speak on the main thing, the key takeaway that I want to basically be paid attention to is when we went over the theory of banking, you understand that the main issue that was going on was the reason why people were going to war. You actually had a underlining understanding of what the Confederate War was really about, because a lot of people didn't like the fact that they wanted to take back their nation's currency and be independent of the banking currency that was basically being placed upon people, which then charged high interest on the loans for using their currency. So then at the end of the day, you were in debt to whoever's currency you were using. So that was one of the alternate reasons they said why the Confederate War was being fought. So you had a bunch of other stuff ahead of time. There was a few other fights and wars and rebellions, or whatever you want to call them, or revolutions that happened prior to that, that spoke on the concept of banking being a cause for people to revolt, rebel, and fight. Now, over time, we may think of these wars or whatever situations that happened were for a surface reason, but if you go underneath and dig deep, you realize that a lot of times people were fighting because of the fact that they didn't like that they were being forced to use a currency, and they realized that the currency that was being used was harming their economy and basically, in I guess a way to say it, turning their people out in a sense. Because if you control the nation's currency, you have control over everything, and everybody's indebted to you for using your currency, and you charge them high interest loans to use their currency and get away from actual money to run their own economy. So whenever we got up to a certain point, we started to notice that previous people were fighting these these theories. Again, like I said, it's called the theory of banking. A lot of these theories they had where a lot of people were fighting, going against these bankers who were charging interest on their currency to be loaned out to them to use. And they realized that every time that they, every time that they would use the banker's currency, they were being charged endlessly. They were the way they got repayment back on using their currency for interest on the loan of using their currency were through taxes, property taxes, sales taxes, all taxes. So if you're forced to use somebody else's currency, then taxes are how they get their repayment. Taxes is a big way how they were getting their payment back. And you probably think about it today, seems like taxes are endless, is because you're constantly using someone else's currency and not actually using money. So whenever we get up to this certain point, we're going to look at a particular individual, and it's a story's being told from a different perspective. And you're going to see in this video that I'm going to play here today is going to speak on another reason, because we have one reason why this individual was who they were, but then from this perspective, you get a different understanding as to why this individual was fighting for his people, and exactly if what he was fighting for, does it have a striking similarity as to what's going on today? You know what I mean? So you're going to look at the video, and you're going to, and it's a long video. So this is probably going to be like a 7 or 8 part series. This is just going to be number 1, but you're going to get an understanding as to figure out if what this person was fighting for, does it sound similar as to what you are witnessing today? You know what I mean? You're going to see, and you're going to make your own opinion. I'm just showing the video. It's a lengthy video, but I'm just going to show the video. I have to read a lot of it to you. But at the end of the day, you can make your own decision to see if, hey, is this true as to what it is that he was fighting for? Is this true from opposite of what you were told for his country? And the timelines as to when his country was thriving as opposed to when the U.S. was going through a Great Depression, or when that country was thriving and when the U.S. is going through a Great Depression. And with that being said, you just use your own understandings to figure out, okay, if what they're saying is true as to how and why he was fighting for his country, is that what you see that's happening to your country today? And if so, then we move on to the AI portion of the show. And when we get to the AI portion of the show, we're going to look at the inside of OpenAI's new mega factory called Stargate. And you're going to see what exactly is going on inside of their new factory and how big it is and what their basically projection is for where they're trying to aim in the future. Because I've shown in the past that there's different stages of AI, and they're pushing forward to the next level of AI, which is called AGI, Artificial General Intelligence. So with that being said, by the time we hit 2030, my humble opinion, we'll be in AGI, which will be taking the AI to the next level. And we'll see if what one person was fighting over in history, did it bring us up to this point to where we are today? And is it too late, or are we screwed? So it's going to be a crazy one to watch. It's going to be interesting to see. Hopefully we have enough time for me to actually put this all together. So we're going to see. So we're not going to waste any time. we're going to jump right into it. The fitness part, like I said, is going to be the bone of the day. Pause. Is going to be the humerus bone. So we're going to jump right into it and get straight to this video, straight to the show, to go ahead and break down everything, explain everything. But it's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be a hell of a learning curve. You know what I mean? It's going to be something that hopefully you can tie in to get a good understanding as to where things were, where things are, and where things are headed, and put you in the mindset of how you need to be operating in life. Because if you saw yesterday's show, what was it? 2 days ago, Google did the I/O press conference of 2025, and they basically just changed the world like overnight with the press conference. If you didn't see, go look at my last video. Google just dropped a hell of a bombshell when it comes to AI. And yeah, the game is changing rapidly. Jobs are being, jobs are going to be, obsolete at some point, because industries won't be replaced. They'll just be taken over. You know what I mean? And it's something that you need to pay attention to. And it's a mindset that I want you to get in. I want you to be able to think how you're going to be moving forward and how things are going to go pressing forward, and what exactly it is that you should be doing, and how you should be not doubling or tripling down, but quadrupling down on what it is, on how to survive and thrive in the future, and to be able to, get ahead of the curve. Because I mean, the curve is already here. It's like, Jesus Christ. So with that being said, focus on your mindset the entire show, because that's what I want you to change. That's what I want you to think about. That's what I want you to get a deep rooted understanding. Think about your mindset on how you have to think and how you have to move forward. Okay. All right. Cool. Let's get it. All right. So starting off the show, we're going to get right to the fitness portion of, well, I guess you can call it fitness, but the bone of the day. And we're going to go right into the humerus bone, which would be the bone of the day. And I'm going to go ahead and start this first video off. We're going to give Ken Hub, but before we do, let me go ahead and refresh this video real quick. Give me a second. Let me refresh this, so therefore we won't have to go through no ads in the middle. But we're going to take a video from Ken Hub, fair use. The video is going to play, but I'm going to go ahead and read off the structure of the humerus bone and get a good understanding as to what. Shut up. I'm going to read off the humerus bone and what it is, how it connects, point of origin, insertion, all that stuff, its functions and all that good stuff. And the video is going to play. We might not be matching in sync as to where I'm at and where it's at, but just give you a visual as we go along. So let's go ahead and pull this up on the screen for you, and we'll go ahead and get started. So there we go. Let me change the banner. Go over to fitness. There we go. Looking pretty shabby. Up 1 second. Let me see what we got going on here. All right. So we got this right here. So let's go ahead and start that going on there. Let me pull this up. Where is it? Right here. All right. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and get started. Let me just make sure that this is off so we don't get any interruptions. Yes, we're off. All right, cool. We're good to go. With that being said, we got the humerus. The humerus is a long bone of the upper arm, and it is extended from the middle shoulder to the elbow. It connects to the scapula, shoulder blade, to the radius and ulna, the forearm bones. And it plays a crucial role in arm movement and strength. So, that's going to be, the bicep bone, basically. And the anatomy of the humerus is going to be the proximal end, the upper part. So the upper part is going to be the head, the round, smooth surface that fits into the glenoid cavity, as you can see, that's green highlighted, of the scapula, forming the shoulder joint. The anatomical neck just below the head, and the greater lesser tubercles, which is the muscle attachment site. Then you have the intertubular bicipital groove, which is the groove between the tubulars where the bicep tendons pass, and the surgical neck is a common fracture site. Now the shaft, which is the middle section, is going to be the deltoid tuberosity. And you're going to have the deltoid tuberosity, which is going to be the rough area on the lateral surface for the deltoid muscle attachment. The radial groove, which runs along the back of the shaft where the radial nerve travels. And then you're going to have the distal end, which is the lower part of the humerus bone. And it's going to be the the capitulum, which is the which articulates with the radius, and then you have the trolleus, or the trolea, which articulates with the ulna, and then you have the medial and lateral epicondyles, which the muscle and the ligaments attach points, and then you have the occlusion fossa, which receives the occlusion of the ulna during the elbow extension. So the muscle attachments are going to be the shoulder muscles, which is going to be your deltoid, your pectoralis major, and your latissimus dorsi. Then you're going to have your arm muscle, which is going to be the bicep brachii, the brachialis, and the tricep brachii. Then you have the forearm flexor and extensors, and then from there it's going to originate from the medial and lateral epicondyles. Now, clinical notes, one thing is the fractures. So fractures is usually going to be surgical neck fractures, which are common in elderly falls, so be careful. And nerve injury, which is the radial nerve, that can be damaged in mid-shaft fractures, causing wrist drops. So this is what we have right here. This is going to be the humerus bone, the bone that is basically your bicep muscle bone. And always remember that muscles move bones. So without muscle, you cannot move your bones. Everything kind of works in tangent with each other. And yeah, that's going to be it with the muscle bone that we have right there for you today. I would go into an anatomy on how it looks, but like I said, we're pressed for time, so we got to kind of smooth groove and go through all of this. But shout out to KenHub on the anatomy of the muscle. I greatly appreciate it. And let's go ahead and get this thing moved out the way. Where we at? There we are. Let's go. Okay, so shout out to them for that one. We greatly appreciate you, KenHub. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next segment of the show. All right, where are we at? Let's see, is this right? There we go. Got that set up right. All right, cool. So that's going to be the fitness portion of the show. Sweet, straight to the point. Just had to get a good understanding of the humerus muscle. As a matter of fact, before we do that, let me go ahead and just see if I can find an anatomy of the humerus. Let me see real quick. I think I can find one for us real quick. It shouldn't take us long to find one. Maybe I can, maybe I can't. Let's see. Can I find one? Yeah, I can. This won't take long. This will be a short, sweet, straight to the point. Shout out Jason Gibson. We're going to go ahead and run your video, your YouTube short. We're going to go ahead and check this out real quick. So let's let him take it away and see what he's got for us. Here we go.
Parts of the humerus. So this is a right humerus, and it's an anterior position. This is medial. This is lateral. So these are the parts of the humerus. We have the head. We have the anatomical neck. Going around right here in the circumference around the humerus is the surgical neck. This is the lesser tubercle and the greater tubercle, and this is the intertubercular groove. We have the deltoid tuberosity. Then we have down here at the bottom, we have the coronoid fossa. On the lateral side, we have the capitulum and the lateral epicondyle. On the more medial side, we have the trochlea and the medial epicondyle. If I flip this over to the posterior side, you can see the olecranon fossa.
All right, so there we go. So you get a better understanding exactly where those parts are that I was referring to. So you can kind of see exactly where things are, attached and connected together. But, it's an actual real life humerus, I would say. So, that's actually somebody's bone that was taken out their body. You know what I mean? That's kind of ew. That's all I can say. It's kind of like, somebody went ahead and got some saw action happen to them. If I could say the least, somebody went ahead and pulled a saw move on them and took it out their body. But hey, shout out to him. Thank you so much for that. We greatly appreciate it. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right, let's gonna go ahead and move on to the next segment of the show, which is gonna be the economy. So this is the part of the economy I was talking about. We're gonna look at a history of a point in time from 1920s to 1940s. Basically, we're gonna look at a different country and kind of get an understanding as to what was going on in a different country and to see as to why they were having issues in their country and what was the hidden meaning as to behind a particular war was happening. And we're going to see if the cause of this war is basically a reflection of how we live today, and if that war was worth fighting for, and if it was cool. If it wasn't, then it is what it is. But however, would the war have been beneficial to humanity and society pressing forward, or would have just been pointless and no need at all? And then again, do you even believe this type of story at the end of the day? Because this is telling a story from a different perspective, which no people or most people never get or care to listen to. So I'm going to go ahead and do it. It's going to take a while. This is going to be a pretty lengthy video. I'm going to let it go through, mainly do minimal stops and pauses, and just fair use for where I'm using this from, and we're going to get a good understanding as to what it is that they're fighting for, and what mindset should you have, knowing that what this person was fighting for, somebody was fighting against him to basically impose their will of what they wanted on his country, even though he didn't want that on his country. But again, this is coming from a perspective of this story that you never heard before, so you may agree with it, you may not, you may get your feelings hurt, but just keep an open mind at the end of the day and just pay attention to the message, not the messenger. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and get this pulled up right here. Change the banner real quick. There we go, the economy. And let's go ahead and get this video started. And this is a pretty lengthy video. All right, so here we go right here. His destiny, however, was not to drift into the waiting oblivion, but to rise to the greatest heights of power, eventually to become one of the most influential men who ever lived. Fair use. Now, for the first time ever, here's the true and factual account of a story many believe to be the greatest story never told. And like I said, this might hurt some people's feelings, but it is what it is. As you see who the story is, untold story of this particular individual. And as we all know the story that we've been told, but then here's a different perspective. And when you get this story, like I said, you want to be able to understand that when you hear what the issue was and what the reasons the wars were fought for, do you agree with the reason he was fighting for his country for? Because we have one story, here's a different story, and see if it makes sense and see if you agree. And if you do agree, if you don't agree or whatever, give your own opinion and see if it was worth fighting for. And if so, what mindset should you have, knowing that since he lost, knowing that somebody was trying to impose their will upon him, you are behind enemy lines, allegedly. How would you move forward with your mindset?
The story began here in the Austrian town of Braunau, with a child born in this house, Adolf Hitler. At his peak, the most popular ruler in Europe. The child born here in Braunau belonged to that handful of human beings who have clearly and decisively changed the history of the 20th century. Linz, Austria, the site of the only memorial to the Hitler family, the grave of Hitler's parents. Nothing about his parents or Adolf's early life gave any hint of the extraordinary career that was to come. His father, Alois, was a stern, short-tempered customs official who beat his son. His mother, Clara, tried to protect him. When she died, young Adolf was broken by grief. He kept her portrait with him for the rest of his life. The infant Adolf was baptized and brought up as a Catholic. At the age of 6, he entered the monastery school at Lambach. Soon, he was top of his class. Hitler was a chorister at the great abbey church of Lambach. I used, he said, to intoxicate myself with the solemn splendor of the services. Every day when he sang in the choir, he saw the memorial to an earlier abbot. Above it was an emblem which a quarter of a century later, Hitler was to adopt for the Nazi party, the swastika. In his teens, Hitler became a moody adolescent. At secondary school in Linz, he lost interest in most of his work. His ambition was to go to Vienna and become an artist or architect. Once there, he produced architectural drawings and watercolors like these. Competent, but not good enough to win the place he longed for at the Viennese Academy of Fine Arts. Little by little, all Hitler's early ambitions in Vienna turned sour. After the shock of being turned down twice by the Academy of Fine Arts, he became a drifter. Hitler later called his period in Vienna the most miserable time of my life. 3 of those miserable years were spent here in a Viennese backstreet at...
Now, remember, real quick, that the one thing I want you to pay attention to is the time frame. Because we watched the video of the theory of banking, and that from 1919, they jumped from 1919 to 1941. And with the theory of banking, this is going to basically fill that gap from 1920 to 1940, and then it'll give an understanding as to what was happening during this time, and see if this particular situation has ties with banking.
This hostel for homeless men.
And if it does have ties with banking, why?
In this depressing hostel, the future Führer passed much of the day sitting with other inmates, churning out drawings and watercolors which earned him a modest income. When he drifted from Vienna to Germany in 1913, he was still dreaming of becoming a great artist or famous architect. Munich, the 1st of August, 1914. A cheering crowd welcomes the outbreak of the First World War.
All right, so then as you see here, we got to the First World War right here. And give me 1 second. I need to change something up here real quick, because I can speed up this process just by a little bit. Oh, wait. Oh, no. Turn that off. I'm going to try to speed this process up just a little bit, because like I said, this is an extremely lengthy video, and I want to be able to speed this process up as much as possible. So let's see. We'll do that there, and we'll see if we can get this going right here. So here we go. So let's see. We'll get that going here, and we'll continue on with the video over here on this side. So here we go. Let's continue. Oh, whoops. Wrong one. There it is. Oh, why is it off? There we go.
On the right is a photographer, and among the crowd he's photographing is the 25-year-old Adolf Hitler.
If you look at the tenacity of his service, I mean, he's a fanatic. And he petitioned King Ludwig III of Bavaria to enlist in what's referred to as the King's Own Regiment. That's an elite Bavarian unit. He was accepted, but put in the 16th Bavarian Reserve Infantry. And World War I is a major influence on Hitler's life. Now, he served his basic training without complaining, but he was always willing to offer his fellow comrades help. He spoke about the evil of tobacco and alcohol to his fellow soldiers. They liked him because of his drawings that he did for them. He would do sketches for them. Remember, he sketched and did a variety of things, you know, in his youth, and was trying to get in the art school. So he really got along with his fellow soldiers. At one point during the trench duties in between 14 and 18, he will have a dog. Somebody's going to steal from him. During World War I, Adolf Hitler repeatedly volunteered for hazardous duty. His first combat was October the 29th, 1914. Hitler's unit lost 3,000 of its 3,600 men after making 5 assaults on the enemy position.
Ah, darn it. Up. Wait, go back. There we go. Okay, let me see if I can get this to be moved. I didn't know they had ads on this thing right here, but we're gonna go ahead and run it through anyway, and let's see what we got. All right, so as you see, we have right now, we're in the time frame of 1914. So from 14 to 18 is where we're at. We're trying to get to 20 to between the 20s and 40s. And I'm not going to let it just go all the way through because, like I said, it's a lengthy video, but I am going to get to a point where we can actually see exactly what was going on in the time frame, and to get an understanding what is alleged, what was going on during this time frame, so we can kind of put a correlation to yesterday's video and today's video and see if what was happening and what was the reason they were having issues, and to see if yesterday's video theory, the theory of banking, ties in with this theory as to why this particular situation had happened and why they clashed. Were there some striking similarities, and if so, do they pan out to what we're seeing today? So let's go ahead and continue. Let me turn this back on, and let me pull this back up. Here we go.
Job, and he liked it. He always liked that job. Then in December of 1914, when you have the famous Christmas truce on December the 25th, Hitler wouldn't leave his trench. And his comment was, such a thing should not happen in wartime. And then he told his buddies that participated that they were wrong to get involved. So no fun while the war goes on. Those are your enemies. Now, between 1914 and 1916, in the final stages of the Battle of the Somme, Adolf Hitler was wounded in the leg by a shell fragment. This sent him back to Germany to recover. And he's there for about 5 months. Hitler could have stayed back in Germany on light duty because of his wound, but demanded to be sent back to the front. So he's no shirker. You got to give a guy some due here for not being a chicken. A lot of people, look for a way to get out of there. Then you have Hitler back again on trench duty, and then he shows up again during the, of course, German offensives. Now, during the Ludendorff offensives, he was armed with a pistol, and he captured 5 French soldiers. And for that, he received the Iron Cross First Class. And you didn't get those at any time in the war for free. You can't dismiss his decorations. He wins the Iron Cross Second Class in 1914, First Class in 1918, and then in mid-October he got another battlefield decoration. But he's never promoted because he had a captain. Captain Fritz Wiedemann said he lacked the capacity for leadership. You just can't make those statements. As the war turned against Germany, he believed that the pacifists and the shirkers, which are people trying to get out of duty, were losing the war. And the thing that enraged him even worse is what is referred to as defeatism in the ranks. They're actually non-commissioned officers who said it was stupid to keep fighting. He beat one up. So we have a corporal beating up a non-commissioned officer and didn't get into trouble for it. He's a fanatic. The end of the war, Hitler was gassed by the British forces advancing near Ypres in mid-October 1918. It bloated his face up, and particularly his eyelids, constantly watering eyes, had a hoarse voice. He then had this terrible pain. He referred to it, quote, piercing pain in my eye socket. He hated leaving the front to go to the hospital. He considered it the happiest chapter in his life. Being there, being something, being with people. He had friends and he had comrades while he was in the war. He was not a loner. He had the respect of his fellow soldiers. He had purpose. By early November, Hitler's spirits had come back, and it was very common for people who had been gassed to plunge into depression because they're concerned about being blind the rest of their lives. On November the 9th, this is 2 days before the armistice, a local pastor came to the hospital and told the patients that on November the 8th that the Kaiser had abdicated and Germany was now a republic. and he told them that the war was lost.
Defeat was followed by a humiliating peace at Versailles. The injustice of Versailles rankled with most Germans for the next 20 years. Unable to accept that the German army had lost the war, Hitler convinced himself that the soldiers had been stabbed in the back by communist revolutionaries and parliamentary politicians. The stab in the back, he believed, was part of a great Jewish conspiracy. Suddenly, Hitler discovered the greatest talent he possessed, the gift of public speaking. He joined a small group of fanatical nationalists in Munich. They became the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or Nazis. In 1921, Hitler became their leader.
Okay, so we're at 1921. All right, so we're filling in that 20-year gap. Okay, so that word was used by the Allies as a derogatory term popularized by the international media for propaganda purposes. After World War I, Germany was in serious danger of a communist takeover with 6 million German Communist Party members in the country. So that particular person was the only 55th member of the NSDAP, and although the membership rapidly grew under his leadership, the early meetings were often held under threats of violence. So vastly outnumbered, the National Socialists would often find their meetings infiltrated, where brawls would inevitably break out. All right, so we're in 1922. Let me see if we can skip forward just a little bit more. Where are we at? Right here.
The book as a whole dwells on the great obsessions which had come to dominate Hitler's political thought. The Jews, racism, living space for the German people, the evils of communism and parliamentary democracy. But it also includes Hitler's views on a variety of other topics, ranging from boxing to syphilis.
And that's crazy. How would you have an interest in that? But it is what it is. All right, so his book will become one of the best-selling books of all time, despite being banned in many countries after the war.
The amazing appeal Hitler was later to exercise, but on his mastery of the spoken word. After prison, the leader, or Führer as he now called himself, had a new political strategy. Instead of planning another coup, he aimed to win power at the polls. What was to win him millions of votes was instead his vision of a great national revival. Hitler's election opportunity came with the onset of the Depression. In a few years, 1 in 3 of the labor force was out of work. Ilse Wenzel was a church social worker during the Depression among the unemployed in the Berlin slums.
The despair was...
Okay, so now they had a depression on their side of the world, and we're in, what year are we in? We're in like the 1920-somethings, mid to late 20s. So they had a depression going on their side of the country. So we can understand that after World War I, they had lost the war. So then they faced a Great Depression. And we see that he had an issue with certain individuals and the way that they ran things. He was not a big fan of socialism. He wasn't a big fan of socialism and a socialist.
Was so
at least the particular ones.
terrible as I can't describe it. You had everywhere beggars. Wherever you went in Berlin, you had beggars.
The democratic political parties offered no solution. To millions of Germans, the only hope was Adolf Hitler.
Have you been to the marketplace? Do you know how much it costs for a loaf of bread these days? 500,000 marks. 500,000 marks. The wheelbarrows aren't big enough to carry the money in.
So he's speaking on the inflation that was going on during their Great Depression that they were having over there in Germany. So he's speaking on their Great Depression that they were going through, and he just clearly wasn't a big fan of that.
He's afraid I'll stir things up. You tell Commissar Karl. This is not a time for silence.
I supported Hitler because he, after having seen all that depravity, all that poverty here, was the only one who could do social justice to the people here.
He had that ability, the ability derived from his readiness to throw himself totally open, to appear, as it were, bare and naked before his audience, to tear open his heart and display, to throw on a few extra generators and suddenly become absolutely charged with energy.
Okay, so here we are, presidential election of 1925. Okay, so they are in, Germany's in they're in a Great Depression right now. So they're going into the year 1925. Election campaign 1929.
It wasn't as though he was using words, it's as though the emotions came direct without words almost. There was a rawness about it, to power.
Seats in 1930.
6.5 million votes, 107 seats. Biggest part.
Okay, now keep in mind that the U.S. Great Depression, the market crash of 1929, that's when the Great Depression started. So like 1925, 1929 in the U.S., and it continued all the way until the start of World War II in 1939. That's the United States Great Depression. Germany was already in a depression prior to that. So they're dealing with the Great Depression right now, as we can see. As far as the timeline goes, it says the market crash of 1929 in the United States started the Great Depression, and it lasted till 1939 when World War II started. Germany was already in a depression with their country prior to 1929, as we can see. And they're having a presidential election right now go on.
Get me Hitler.
Nobody's ever had this power to move audiences. Everybody says it the way he says it.
Hitler comes to power, not as he had hoped through outright victory at the polls, but as head of a coalition government. As this withering glance suggests, Hitler despises his coalition partners. He quickly outmaneuvers them and establishes his own dictatorship.
A month after he comes to power, the Reichstag building, the Parliament building in Berlin, is set on fire. This happens to come at the time when he is constantly insisting that there is a communist plot to overthrow the new government and just carry out a revolution. And the Reichstag fire goes up in flames, which everybody could see. Before that night was over, he had got a set of decrees drawn up which transformed the situation politically. All the guarantees which people in any democratic state, the freedom of speech and so on, freedom from arrest, all this is swept away.
Here we go. In the 1920s, Berlin was known as the center. Okay, so here we go. This is the part I want you to pay attention to. Again, I'm not praising this certain individual. I'm just putting together pieces from yesterday's video that we talked about the theory of banking, and then looking at what's going on the other side of the world around the same time from the 20s to 40s, which they skipped over in that video, the theory of banking. They skipped the 20s and 30s and jumped straight to the 40s after 1919. I just want to put together and see if there is a striking similarity as to what was going on in those 20 years and where we're at now. And if there are similarities, what would it be different if people had a different mindset pressing forward? So here we go. We're going to read this right here. In the 1920s, Berlin was known as the center of sexual perversion, drugs, and depravity. Once in power, that individual ordered the city cleansed of these elements. Obscene books, prawn, and other communist literatures were all burned by the National Socialists. So, as we see right here, it just said the 20s, Berlin was the center of sexual perversion, drugs, and depravity. Strikingly odd, because that's where we're at today. There's a whole lot of sexual perversion, drugs are everywhere, and depravity is everywhere. And he wanted to order the city to be cleansed of these elements, so he got rid of obscene books, prawn, and the communist literature. Okay, the clampdown were for certain people, promiscuous liberals, and other people, such as this person right here was known as bisexual, to leave for the U.S. So he sent them people and they left to the U.S. This is during the 20s. And it shows right here in 1933, Berlin is burning a prawn in communist literature.
Of other political parties and the setting up of a police state, because Hitler offers a way out of the depression.
If he's doing things which are not so good, which happened, then we said, well, you have to take the rough with the smooth. Dictatorship seemed to be the only way to get out of the mess. So I thought that was a good thing that they cut away all this nonsense and rather did something, really did something, and that's what Hitler did.
He eliminated the crushing unemployment that Germany suffered. And he gave millions of people new confidence and indeed welfare. They were doing better, much better.
Okay, so when he assumed power in 1933, there were 7 million unemployed Germans, the highest per capita unemployment rate in Europe at the time. In only his first year in office, an unprecedented 3.3 million were helped back to work. His brilliant and innovative ideas, including building motorways, the length and breadth of the country with housing units provided for workers. The workers' families would then eagerly spend the newly earned wages, contributing to a fast-growing economy. Priority was given to the health and fitness of the nation, especially the youth. Free healthcare and generous financial support were provided for expectant mothers. The world's first anti-smoking campaigns are also introduced. In addition, it was now government policy to protect the environment and wildlife. This is him fighting to get his country out of a depression. Allegedly. This is just a different side of the story of this certain individual that's never been told. But like I said, I'm just showing a gap from yesterday's live stream that I did, bridging the gap from 1920 to 1930, that spoke on the theory of banking. They went from 1919 to 1940 and they skipped 20 years. And I'm showing what was going on the other side of the world during that 20 year that they skipped. Crime was virtually eliminated, with city streets made safe to walk again. Workers subsidized by the government would take holidays abroad. He is the first in Europe to introduce the 40-hour work week with extra pay for overtime. Factories are now required to provide workers with restrooms and a cafeteria. The NSDAP leadership looked upon the charging of interest on loans as immoral, and by forcing banks to abolish the practice of usury, millions were freed from the slavery of debt. It was a spectacular financial recovery not witnessed before or since, and often referred to as the greatest economic miracle of all time. Meanwhile, most Western countries were still mired in the Great Depression. So he was literally fighting to get his country out of the Great Depression, and it shows right here. Where is it? Right here. And it shows right here. Let me go back a little bit. It shows what was causing it. What was causing the depression? Number one, they lost the World War. They lost World War I. And then it says right here, the leadership looked upon the charging of interest on loans as immoral. Who charges interest on loans? Banking institutions, or whoever runs your currency, whoever has control of your currency or your money, that's who charges interest on loans. He saw it as immoral, and he was forcing the banks to abolish the practice of usury, and millions were freed from the slavery of debt. That is literally the story of what a lot of people are going through right now. A lot of people are enslaved to debt. Everybody is enslaved to some type of debt, and the Bible even talks about being a debt slave. He was literally fighting to get his country out of that, and he implemented certain, protocols or whatever he put into place to get his country out of that. And it seemed like it was something that worked, and it's never talked about. Now, if you look on the flip side, believe it or not, doesn't that seem like what's happening to the rest of the world or other sides of the world? I'm not praising him. I'm not saying he was right. I'm not saying he was wrong. I'm just saying it's strikingly odd to go back and look at his story in that time frame and to see what he was against, and to see that one of the reasons why the fight was happening was to get his country out of a Great Depression, and the issue that he was having was dealing with banks. He was fighting banks, and he was able to get his country into a better position, providing work and protecting expectant mothers in pregnancy and providing a better way for his country. That's all I just wanted to show right there. That's really it right there. To kind of show that even though what you think or what you know, that's strikingly similar to what we have going on today. That's really it right there. Now, again, I'm not praising what he did was right or what he did was wrong, but you can't help but notice that has a striking similarity as to what's going on today. You know what I mean? And he was actually using the government powers, allegedly, in this story to help provide for the citizens and put them into a better situation and basically get them out of a Great Depression. And the time was 1933. U.S. was in a Great Depression from 1929 to 1939, and it took World War II to get the U.S. out of a depression. It took a war to get U.S. out of depression. He implemented policies and structures within his country to get them out of their depression. It didn't require a war to get them out of the depression. He abolished and stopped some things, allegedly, according to this story. So that's an interesting that's an interesting story to look upon, to see how things are being ran today and how things are going. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the last portion of the show, because I'm almost done here because I don't have much time left. We're going to move on over to the AI portion of the show. So now you fast forward all the way to where we're at now. So in today's world, we're now in the era of AI and technology. And with AI and technology, we're looking into Sam Altman's OpenAI mega factory called Stargate. And we're going to look at where they're headed and how they're projecting things to go on in the future. Meanwhile, if you look at the state of the way of the world that we live in the previous story that I just went over, there's a lot of sexual immorality, a lot of perversion, a lot of depravity that's going on. Undercurrent is what's happening. But then if we look and see what's going on within the AI structure, we're seeing a dismantling of a lot of jobs in the future. So let's take a look and see what this mega factory that is in, I think it's in Abilene, Texas, but they're building a mega AI factory called Stargate. So let's take a look at this, and we're going to switch over the banner and take a look at this mega factory that's being built from OpenAI Sam Altman. So let's go ahead and take a look at this.
Companies like Microsoft, Meta, Google, Amazon, and xAI are all building AI data centers of their own at sites across the US and beyond. Each company wants to have the most capable AI being used by the most people, and they've committed tens of billions of dollars to make it happen.
There's no reason we won't scale up our computing 100,000 times in a few years.
I'm good for my 80 billion. I'm going to spend $80 billion building out Azure.
The downside of being behind is that you're out of position for the most important technology for the next 10 to 15 years.
But beyond just making better AI, many tech leaders want to be the first to create AGI.
So if you look, they're going towards the future, understood, with their AI. Now, with this AI that's being implemented, are they looking out for the best? Are they looking out for the best interests of the citizens? As we saw in the last story, allegedly, the last story, the government was used to basically rid it of its basically immoral and sinful nature and cleanse it of a different mindset and a different way of living and bringing back up the economy and putting people in a better position. Now we're looking at years later, or damn near 100 years later at this point, almost. Now we're seeing these mega corporations and mega conglomerates. Now they're in a position, but now they're looking towards generating AI and AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, a race to that. And are they looking out for the best interests of the citizens, or are they looking to implement universal basic income, which then, if you're giving universal basic income, does that free you from debt or does that enslave you to debt? But let's look at how they're progressing forward.
Artificial general intelligence, a super smart agent that can think and learn just like a human, if not better. Large language models like ChatGPT have gotten more capable as the technology's evolved, so the hope is that adding an astronomical amount of compute will make them even more capable.
Take me back to the beginning before Stargate. What did you start seeing that made you realize we need more compute, more power, more connectivity, that you were hitting a limit and needed to scale?
We used to think a lot about the compute we would need to train the models. And what we didn't used to think about as much as how much people were going to use these models. Mm-hmm. I mean, we did think about it. It just turned out people want to use the models much more than we imagined. And a couple of years ago, maybe after the launch of GPT-4 in ChatGPT, it really started to hit like, oh man, this is like gone from a lot of compute to like the biggest infrastructure project in history. And out of that emerged Stargate.
Why call it Stargate?
It began as a code name, and sometimes code names stick.
But it means something, right?
The design of one of the very early layouts of a data center looked a little bit like Stargate from the show.
How did you get to talking with Masayoshi Son and Larry Ellison, and how did you all come together?
I did 2 kind of long trips around the world, and a lot of it was to talk to developers and governments, but a lot of it was also to just really try to like get my head around the supply chain. On one of those trips, I met with Masa, and we got to speaking about what it would take to do compute at this kind of scale.
Hi, Masa. It's so nice to see you. What conversations did you have with Sam that led to Stargate?
Well, we have a shared vision of...
This is Masayoshi, so Soft Group Bank CEO. Soft Group Bank CEO.
AGI coming soon, and we need compute.
Of all the bets you could make, why this? Why Stargate?
Well, I believe in the vision that this AI, the AGI, will change the mankind's life in every aspect. And we are lucky to see this enormous revolution, and I'd like to be part of that. I get excited.
Last month, I came to celebrate your winning and promised that we will invest $100 billion. And you told me, oh, Masa, go for 200. Now I came back with 500.
Explain the math to us. How does it all add up to needing $500 billion?
Well, that covers the capacity we think we need for the next few years, given our growth projections. The interesting question is if we knew how to get $1 trillion right now, which we don't, would we be able to deploy that profitably in the next few years? And I'm not sure about that, but I feel confident we can make 500 billion of value back.
All right, so what are we seeing?
There's many forklifts, there's many cranes, there's many dump trucks, there's many excavators.
New creatures emerge at every turn. Are most of the workers from Abilene?
We're a very large employer here in Abilene, but we have brought in a lot of labor from outside the city and outside the state. We actually have workers from 7 different states. I've never built anything of this scale. It's one of the underappreciated aspects of AI is actually just the physical infrastructure that's needed.
That is huge. Look how big that is.
Appreciated aspects of AI is
Jesus, look how huge that area is. That is huge.
actually just the physical infrastructure that's needed.
This is awesome. I love it.
Building stuff.
Yes.
There's 155 vehicles that are moving dirt, moving earth right now.
There's something so satisfying about seeing lots of dirt being moved.
Yeah, absolutely. If you look at that crane, like this red crane, that's a 600-ton crane.
I have no, like, how does that compare to other cranes?
It can lift a lot. It can lift a lot of weight. I mean, 600 tons. That's like 100 elephants, right?
This is actually happening around the world. Data centers are being built in Malaysia and Japan and France.
I think the demand for compute infrastructure, it's not a US phenomenon, it is a global phenomenon. A lot of countries have actually decided that data centers are critical infrastructure that must be accelerated.
So if hyperscalers are going to Malaysia or Japan, is that competition for you?
We don't really see it as competition. We kind of see it as just an overall growth of the sector. We think we have a lot of unique ways of doing it and a lot of value to add in the process, but pretty just excited by everything happening in the space.
Lockmiller's path to leading the Stargate build has been circuitous. He's climbed 5 of the so-called 7 summits, the tallest mountain on each continent, and worked in physics and finance.
Tell me about your journey before Crusoe. You grew up in Denver. You started out using AI as a trader on a wall.
I'm gonna jump to the risk.
This is a chessboard.
Well, we'll get to the risk once they get past this ad right here. So we're gonna jump to the risk to see exactly what are the risks that are being taken to basically put this mega freaking factory to use. So let's go ahead and get this pulled back up and let's see what this is all about. Here we go.
The sizes keep getting bigger. Yeah. And bigger. Is there a
Because remember, they're building these all across, they just named, they're building these globally all across the world. There's different data centers going to be placed all over the world, and they're trying to get to a race to implement AGI, artificial general intelligence, which is the next stage.
chance we're overbuilding? Do we need all this?
God, every single day somebody has a different take, right? Every single day, like we saw with DeepSeek, right? That, wait a second, do we really need all of this infrastructure?
For those not obsessively following every twist and turn in the AI race, DeepSeek is a Chinese company whose own AI model went viral in January. Their AI performed at a similar level to leading US models, but used far fewer computing resources. This raised the question, are Stargate-scale mega projects really necessary?
DeepSeek appears to have found a more efficient way to power AI. Was that a moment of rethink for you? And are you doing anything differently now?
I think the DeepSeek team is very talented and did a lot of good things. I don't think they figured out something like way more efficient than what we figured out.
But do you think there is a more efficient way to
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. We have made incredible efficiency strides year over year, and I'm sure we'll keep doing that in the future.
So if that's the case, why are you building all this?
If we had an AI that we could offer at 1/10 of the price of current AI, I think people would use it 20 times as much. And we would still need twice as much compute to satisfy the then current demand.
So with that answer to that question, if people use your AI, the AI is not free, so therefore you have a bunch of customers. That's just my take on it. You have a bunch of customers, but you got to try to figure out what the end game is to all this. We're still trying to figure that out. Let's see.
Some companies seem less sure. Microsoft, for example, announced that it was pausing or canceling several data center builds in the US and abroad.
A lot of folks worry that we aren't that far from seeing some kind of pullback, some kind of wall. It's kind of like how all the big tech companies were hiring every single person they could in 2020, 2021. Then at one point, they started firing people. And I think we're at this point where every time a lease gets canceled for a data center, people wonder, oh, did we hit this moment? Do we really need all of this infrastructure? Is there really a payoff in the end? Are folks going to use these tools enough that it's going to pay for all of this build out?
How confident are you that OpenAI is going to be a financially sustainable and profitable enough company to justify all of this investment?
It's looking like we're doing really well. I mean, like we are definitely doing something unprecedented.
That is true.
I feel confident in the bet. Doesn't mean something can't go wrong.
What are the risks?
I mean, maybe, people stop wanting to like pay for AI services and then we have a difficult financial position.
If people want to stop paying for AI financial services, we have a difficult financial decision. If people stop wanting to, what is the decision to the difficulty of finances?
What do you say to the people out there who think this is a massive boondoggle?
Look, I think there's always going to be doubters, but I think the money piece, I think so long as AI is delivering value to society, the money will be there to build the infrastructure. I have no concerns around that. Even if it's not all 100% accounted for today, that money is there, and there's a...
What's the value that AI is bringing to society? Because we just looked at Google VO3 or Google I/O conference that they just did 2 days ago for 2025, and it looks like a lot of jobs in industries will be obsolete. They will be diminished. They won't be replaced. They'll be diminished. They'll be taken over by AI. So therefore, I don't understand what he's saying with that comment.
A lot of money that wants to invest in this category. What we're undergoing right now is sort of the largest infrastructure bill in human history, right? This is like where we built the interstate highway system. That enabled massive interstate commerce and transportation and catalyzed this massive boom in the US economy. What's happening in AI infrastructure is we're building the superhighway system that's going to enable modern intelligence systems. That's going to create all sorts of new job categories that don't even exist today. Mm-hmm. It's going to create new ways of doing business. It's going to create new ways of invention, and it's going to really drive humanity forward.
The data center boom isn't just affecting the AI business. There are local impacts too. Across the country, places like Abilene are trying to attract data center projects and the jobs and tax revenue that come with them.
I make $1 a year being mayor, so I've got to have another business too.
So your side business is still the pest control?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a hired killer.
How would you describe Abilene?
Well, Abilene, it's an old railroad town, so we have lots of Western heritage. But that doesn't mean that we don't want to grow and look forward to the future. We want our city to grow, and we look forward to these opportunities that are coming to us.
What have you heard about the Stargate project?
It could quite possibly be the largest AI data center in the world, and that excites me, and to know that we're going to be a front runner in technology right here in West Texas.
I've spent the last couple of months looking at some of these biggest projects and trying to see what documents we can find. How have these, some of the world's largest, most powerful companies been interacting with these local municipalities? Largely what we have found is that these local towns are willing to forego quite a bit of tax revenue, quite a bit of control to be able to bring these big companies in.
What is Abilene giving up to have Stargate?
They're willing to forego quite a bit of tax revenues to have these data centers put in. Okay, but you got to remember, if they're looking to forego tax revenue to put these data centers in, the mayor says he gets paid $1 a year. He's probably just being facetious or being funny on that part. But if you tie in the past 2 streams that I've done, the one I did yesterday and then kind of going off of what I just did today with the last story, the theory of banking, understanding that the wars that have been going on, and then seeing that taxes are a major part of paying back currency that is being provided from the bankers. And if the reason why people get taxed is because they're using the currency of the bankers that control everything. Then we just saw the last video with a particular individual, I can't say his name. He was fighting against that. He didn't want his country to be taxed to an oblivion. So he fought to abolish high interest rate loans in order to help boost his nation's economy, which in turn it worked, allegedly, according to that story. But then inevitably in the end he ended up losing, which then in turn, when he lost, his country went back into another state of, economic and financial turmoil. So now we're here all these years later, and now we're looking and we're seeing, are we in a time of financial prosperity, or are we seeing majority of people fall into a time of economic turmoil?
Here.
So what Abilene agreed to with Stargate with this data center is 85% of tax.
So this agreement is authorized by the Act in accordance with the City Tax Abatement Guidelines and approved by resolution of the City Council. Developer abatement, subject to terms and conditions of the city agreement, hereby grants developer an abatement of 85% of the taxable value. Okay, what is an abatement? What is an abatement in law? An abatement refers to a suspension or termination of a legal proceeding, usually a lawsuit, before it reaches a final judgment. It can occur for various reasons, including death of a party, the discovery of a prior action on the same matter, or a challenge to the court's jurisdiction to the plaintiff's plea and abatement. Let's see. So they grant the developer an abatement of 85% of the taxable value of the land improvements and any tangible personal property owned by the developer for a period of 10 years, beginning for the first year of abatement for such land improvements or tangible personal property. So we have an abatement, but there's a bunch of different kinds of abatement. So I don't understand which abatement that we're talking about. Abatement refers to a suspension or termination of a legal proceeding, usually a lawsuit. So the abatement of 85% of the taxable value. Okay.
Tax revenue off the property tax wiped.
So they're losing
of tax. So what Abilene agreed to with Stargate with this data center is 85% of tax revenue off the property tax wiped.
So they're losing out on 85%.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they would say, and the developers would say, that you're still getting a lot of property tax revenue, and that's probably true, right? But these are pretty tough deals being struck, right? I mean, I think a lot of these smaller towns did not take place in the tech boom of the last 20 years. All of those jobs went to the coasts, right? And I think there's a lot of local city leaders who want to be able to say, we're a part of this. And they're willing to strike some pretty extreme deals to make it happen.
You're giving up 85% in tax revenue.
Yeah, we're getting 15% of billions of dollars, so that's the way I look at it, right? It is a large tax increase. We're talking millions of dollars on an annual basis. It's going to help us to pave streets, to hire police officers, to do the things cities do.
When you were negotiating, did you feel like there was a risk they could go elsewhere? Like, were you worried about not winning the deal?
Whenever you're attracting a prospect, yes, you always worry about that. But at the same time, if it wasn't going to work for both parties, we weren't going to lay down and just get run over by these people either.
How many jobs do you think Stargate will really create?
Well, I'll tell you what I've heard. So somewhere between 400 and 1,200. There's going to be security, there's going to be maintenance. They're going to have grass, people are going to mow grass out there. So there's going to be all kinds of jobs that go with something that large too, other than just the technical jobs.
We think about tech investments and tech campuses as kind of these thousands of high-paying jobs that are really kind of boosting the local economy. Once data centers are completed, it's often not a lot of full-time workers.
How many people does it really take to run a data center? Like, I keep thinking about that scene in Silicon Valley.
But if AGI gets implemented, then at some point, then the data centers won't be ran by that. Jobs won't be given to people. They'll be outsourced to AI bots and robots and things of that nature. And only 400 to 1,200 jobs for something that big. I mean, I don't know. It's just me going on a whim.
And there's one guy in that data center.
There's really no difference between day and night down here, so it makes things easy.
There are going to be quite a few people here. I know you're looking for a specific number from me, but I can't give it to you.
What if they don't create as many jobs as you hope for?
I don't know a lot about AI centers or how many people they employ. I mean, I'm going to be honest about that. But, they're still building the facility. They're still putting billions of dollars into the economy. And so we're just trusting. We have to have a little trust with these partnerships.
I don't know. I mean, if you go back to the Google press conference that they did, the I/O conference, I mean, they just eliminated a ton of jobs. So if these data centers are able, if they're pushing out AGI out of these data centers, because that's what the race is for, it's a race to AGI, then there's going to be a bunch of robots. There's going to be a bunch of robots and not humans.
Downtown Abilene, right now, it's really windy. I can see why this is a good place for wind power. Oh, we just wanted to talk to people to see what they think about Stargate, if they've heard of it.
Interesting.
So we're going to go try to find some folks and not blow away. So, have you heard of Stargate?
I have.
Until recently, I had not.
Have you heard of Stargate?
No.
It was announced by Trump, and that's kind of really all that I've heard.
I know that it has to do with AI and is supposed to bring maybe a lot of people to Abilene.
It's going to be a big server farm and employ quite a few people.
What do you think about that?
Computers are a good thing. I'm a computer guy. I did that in the Army. I invented computers.
Oh, you invented computers.
Yeah.
So what do you hope it brings to Abilene?
I would love to see more people here, and especially like it would help local businesses.
For Abilene, for West Texas, I think it creates a huge stream of jobs that aren't readily available. Meth and alcohol addiction is huge in this area because one of the only jobs available is oil and gas. And so this adds something different and hopefully breaks some of those cycles.
Do you have any concerns about how much power they're going to use or water and?
You know, I know that AI takes up a lot of power to use, but I'm not too sure what exactly it'll do to Abilene. I feel like I'm not concerned on that side of things.
It's going to use a lot of power. Does that concern you?
That's all good. What's wrong with that?
Well, it might put some stress on the Abilene grid.
Well, need to increase the grid then.
What do you think about AI?
AI has terrified me for 20 years. I think there's so many questions that we don't have answers to when it comes to AI. I think we're biting off way more than we can chew.
Do you use AI at all?
I actually do use AI, yeah. Our professors at ACU sometimes recommend that we use it. I think it's a good thing. I think it can be used two ways, either creatively or kind of a crutch.
So how do you feel about the fact that Abilene's going to be the site of this big development?
I love jobs coming to Abilene, but I'm not excited about it. Where are we going and how do you even fight it? The big picture to me is AI is going to take over and then where are we as humans? You know, it terrifies me.
There's going to be that push for, if humans are obsolete, then universal basic income. And if you push for universal basic income, that's what I was basically explaining with the theory of banking and the last video we just looked at in the economy portion of this show. What happens when you have someone fighting their country to rid themselves of the elimination of bankers forcing their currency upon people with high interest loans? But then if you give somebody money and basically supply them with income, you're loaning them money, which then you are enslaved to debt of someone else forever.
It honestly just terrifies me.
Well, mixed reviews. There's definitely a lot of questions. We'll have to see how the project pans out, and it's going to happen over years. So it could be a while before we know for sure. There is this lofty promise that AI data centers are going to create thousands and thousands of jobs. Meantime, AI is destroying jobs elsewhere. And I feel like even, there's serious anxiety.
Exactly. There's this theory of AI is going to create all the jobs, and meantime, AI is destroying jobs elsewhere. But when she says that, look at his face. Look at his face when she says this.
Lofty promise that AI data centers are going to create thousands and thousands of jobs. Meantime, AI is destroying jobs elsewhere. And
look where his eyes are at. Can't even look her in the face.
I feel like even, there's serious anxiety out there. People are scared.
Totally.
Even among the best engineers and technologists, people are scared. What do you say to those people?
AI is for sure going to change a lot of jobs, totally take some jobs away, create a bunch of new ones.
Mm-hmm.
This is like this is what happens with technology. And in fact, I think if you look at the history of the world, that's just been happening for a long time. The thing I think the world is not ready for, people have maybe abstractly thought okay, it's gonna be a better programmer than me, it's gonna be, better at customer support, whatever. I don't think the world has really had the humanoid robots moment yet. Like the first day you're like walking down the street and there's like 7 robots that walk past you doing things or whatever, it's gonna feel very sci-fi. And I don't think that's very far away from like a visceral, like, oh man, this is gonna do a lot of things that people used to do. So yeah, it's coming. And we have always tried to just be super honest about what we think the impact may be, realizing that we'll be wrong on a lot of details.
Lately, predicting the future of AI seems...
Okay, well, I'm just going to go ahead and just end it on that note, because that spoke volumes. And I personally, the way I see the AI moving, like I said, I basically pled my case. If you look at the last video with the theory of banking, and then look at the video we just did before this one, I can't say the individual's name, but the country that was fighting to get rid of sexual immorality, what was it? Depravity, and the fact that their nation at the time was under a massive depression, and the way he got his country out of that allegedly was to get rid of high interest loans and get away from forcible bankers who were forcing these high interest loans on people, putting them into debt slavery. But then if you bring in AI and then you put people out of jobs and then you bring in universal income, okay, you're forcing people to use your income, which then puts everybody into debt slavery. That's it. That's a fact. So if everybody is being forced into debt slavery to use your universal basic income to survive, you just enslaved the whole planet. Well, people, ladies and gentlemen, thank y'all so much. I just had to go ahead and kind of put those two things together and give my little synopsis and my 2 cents on how I see things are going to be moving, and the mindset that I want you to have to grasp and understand what exactly is going on, and what you need to be able to be able to look at the big picture and try to see for yourself and understand how to navigate and how to move whenever, things go the way that they're going, because he said it's coming and we've already seen it, and he's already seeing that robots going to be walking down the street, and by 2030 or before that, I'm pretty sure that's going to be happening. There's no doubt about it. But the way you have to try to move and navigate, because Google I/O just dropped a massive upgrade when it comes to AI, and the lady even mentioned the data scientists and engineers are all at risk for a job. Everybody. So if everybody's at risk for a job, everybody is at risk to be put on a universal basic income. And like I proved in the theory of banking video, bankers place nations under their currency. And when they place nations under their currency, they then tax that nation for using their currency, which is why the bankers make money, is off of the taxes that you pay for using their currency, property taxes, any kind of tax you think. So now if you're placed under a universal basic income, you're basically using someone's income forcibly, which then makes you a debt slave. So with that being said, just give it some thought, have a mindset shift, try to figure out the best way you can navigate through this. Log into my Discord, where I have accountability help for you every single day, where I'm always doing fitness, trying to better yourself, personal growth, personal development, and trying to find ways to be able to navigate and have good conversations on how you should move forward into what's going on in the world. I will constantly be putting up more live streams as well. Log into my YouTube channel and go to the video portion. We can do at-home fitness workouts, because at some point it's going to probably be hard to get to a gym. But with that being said, man, thank y'all so much. And I'll try to stream again tomorrow if I'm able to. School's ending soon, so daddy duties. But I'll catch y'all later. We'll see y'all next time. Take care. Peace.
Say they proud of me. I'm eating good, smoking broccoli, taking over blocks like Monopoly. Only
bread, then buy the dream. The game gon' lie, and I got the keys like Jay. How my fame won't stop, no, the only thing I'm chasing. The game gon' lie, and I got the keys like Jay.